This is Mongolian Mindset, and today we're going to be typing Mr. Cancel himself, Matt Rife. We'll be using Linda Barrens Temperament and Interaction styles combined with cognitive functions. We have all these metrics broken down in videos. I'm going to drop it in the comments. It's a playlist of how to find anyone's personality type. So watch that if you want to figure out how you can type anyone's personality type. And we also have the cognitive functions also broken down, and that's in, just click on the playlist, cognitive functions breakdown. I'm going to be dropping a comment to that as well. But let's go see what the monkeys, the half dead, brain dead, the zombies, free base crack cocaine users have him as. That's personality database. They have him as an ESTP. Okay. So we'll look at our chart here and let's see what we get. So ESTP, they are initiating. So that means they're extroverted. They're concrete. So they're not thinking about any what ifs or anything, possibilities or anything like that. They're TIFE, so they're logical, like refer to a logical framework, and they know how other people feel. Things of that nature. They'll talk about that. They're SENI. They're more about talking about what other people are doing, things like that, and that nature of the environment, things of that nature. They're going to be struggling to know what they want because they're NI inferior, or narrowing things down is going to be a weakness for them. Also, let's see, they're interest-based, so they know what they get out of a situation. They like intentions and stuff to be put on the front table, so what I'm getting out of it and what you get out of it. They want to know that off rip. The pragmatic, so they're rebellious contrarians. The direct, so they're specific, concise, and to the point. And the outcome focused, that means they look at the end product. Okay, so if he meets those metrics, we'll call him an ESTP. If he don't, we'll find his real personality type. So we have our metrics over here, and once we get 5 of them, we're going to start knocking them down. And comment below what you think his personality type is. And guys, we are still doing the free typing sessions by us. I'm just gonna be flat out honest with you. I think we're the best, period, when it comes to typing. If you want to find your actual real personality type, you come here. If you want to go and get fucked around and fucked up, you go somewhere else. And I can promise you that. We take it very seriously. We sit here and we take from up to a 30 to an hour asking you questions to figure out your personality type. And it's not just me, it's Thomas or Shelly or even both of them at times. And we've been doing this for a while. We have done over 100 interviews on this channel itself. You let me know what MBTI content creators doing that. Knowing that we do it absolutely free. All we ask you to do is subscribe to the channel, join our Facebook group or Discord, and message our moderator Cody, and he will get back to you with our availability, and we will get that done. You know, we really care about our group, and all we ask is you stay in the group, and you stay in there because we might ask questions, and we like to poll people and get accurate information. That's what we want to have. We want to have the most accurate MBTI group, period. Okay, so when we want to go and we want to say, ESTP, what do you think about this? Or ENTP, I'm trying to do this, or INTP, what do you think is the best for this? Or ISTJ, tell me the best way to go about this. Or INTJ, what do you see in the future for this? Or things like that, things of those natures. Okay, what's the best affiliative way to go about this? We want to do that, and we want that to be open to all our members in the group because a lot of people have questions. So let's get into this. Okay, comment below what you think his personality type is, and let me know if you get it right. And comment a celebrity you want typed.
On an old joke, you know what I mean? It was a real circumstance that happened, an exaggerated instance that really happened, and I went, this is a classic joke. Why not give my own personal modern twist on it and move on? The joke's like a minute and 30 seconds, and people were like, all he did was bash women. And I purposely did it first in the show to go, hey, just so you know, this is the kind of humor I like to tell. And if it's not for you, you are so more than welcome to turn off the TV right now.
To talk about that sort of thing in more detail. One of the things I've noticed is that people who are harassed by
so we have typed Jordan Peterson, INTP. So I will be pointing out some TI statements that this guy says, because he will say a lot of deductive reasoning, not inductive reasoning. he will be saying deductive reason. That means if this and that statements, we will catch it in real time for the dumb motherfuckers who think he's something else.
Sorial-minded null-wits almost always back down and apologize. And then my sense of that is that a mob comes after them first for whatever hypothetical sin they've committed, and then they apologize, and a second mob comes after them for that.
Exactly.
And then they lessen their own character by the false apology, and they embolden these idiot accusers. And so why did you decide, when this blew up around you, and I mean in some ways it's a tempest in a teapot, but when this blew up around you, why did you decide to take the strategy that you took? Why weren't you like racked with guilt and apologetic? And
because it's just comedy. I'm just doing what's funny to me. It's never any deeper than that, nor should it be for anybody. I'm saying things that my imagination drums up, that makes me happy, release
My imagination drums up
endorphins in my head that makes my life happier. And all I do is share those thoughts with other people in hopes that it makes their life easier.
well, I've been watching what you do on your specials, and you're continually interacting with the audience, which, and correct me if I've got this wrong, I mean, a lot of the comedians that I've spoken to, they spend a lot of time preparing their sets and practicing, but you're doing, it seems to be something that's much more akin to spontaneous wit. And that's a dangerous thing to do because you could easily be not funny.
Oh, high risk, high reward, yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's also that.
Okay, so he just initiated it. High risk, high reward. Okay, high risk, high reward. That is a pragmatic statement.
Because you're doing that, you don't have a lot of time to exactly think through what you're going to say, right? I mean, if something strikes you as amusing, you pretty much have to go for it. And if your head's full of censorship-related thoughts, you're going to be not funny in about 15 seconds. So
If you're, there you go, T.I. statement from Jordan Peterson. Okay, he just hit one.
You have to let the intrusive thoughts win in comedy. You have to. What comes?
Right, so he just initiated again.
If you're a naturally funny person, the first thing that comes to your mind should be the funniest thing to you most of the time in a comedic situation.
And it has to be the first thing. Yeah, you know, if you're writing a multiple choice test, by the way, if you second guess your.
We got another if from Jordan Peterson yet again, but people think he's a fucking ENTJ.
Your intuition about the right answer, you're more likely to be wrong with the second guess.
Is that true?
Yeah, that immediate
makes
response.
complete sense.
Yeah, that immediate response tends to be better. Yeah, well, and it's a weird thing, because that thing that's comical inside you, that's providing you with the intuition for the jokes, it has to be in quick
Timing's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be a quick relationship with the audience. Yeah, timing is absolutely everything. You want to say the most pointed thing at exactly the right time. And so, what do you think, or maybe, I don't know.
Peterson is talking about outcomes there.
If you've thought about it, what do you think is, well, first of all, how broad scale do you think this rebellion against what you said actually is? How many people do you think are behind it? And why do you think it's become such a big deal?
It's probably a few dozen thousand, which sounds like a lot until you remember there's 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And I would say 90% of the small majority that is upset with me doesn't go to comedy shows anyway, or wouldn't vibe with me as a person anyways, which is fine.
Right, they're probably not that funny. I watched a couple of them today on YouTube.
I can imagine.
Oh my God, yeah, I mean, they're the sort of people that you just want to, what do you want for them? You want them to spend eternity in a hell composed of nothing but people like them talking to them.
Oh, so Twitter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly that.
Right.
But that's the thing, is it's like whether you enjoy what I do or not, you don't even have to know it exists. If I'm your problem, if you and I are face to face and you have a problem with my comedy that I tell, that I admit to the world, right? If you just remove yourself from it.
If you just do this. Okay, so we got some T.I. You said a couple of them already. I just didn't pull the trigger on them. I like to hear abundance of them.
If you do something as simple as just turn around, there is an entire planet behind you for you to go explore and live the rest of your life. You don't
planet explore. He's going abstract there. Okay, that's not a real planet.
don't ever have to think about me. You don't have to talk about me. I don't like screamo heavy metal music. Guess how often I think about it or talk about it? 0% of the time. You just remove yourself from the situation. I see no harm in trying to make people laugh as a general intention.
Yeah, well, I also don't understand.
My intentions are pure. I'm just making people laugh. Let me.
Exactly. From a purely logical.
entp, fe child, and your fi tricks to getting your ass in trouble.
Perspective, what the people who are complaining exactly expect from you, because, and maybe it is that they have no sense of humor, or and that's highly likely, or that they're doing something we can talk about, which is gaining some kind of benefit from their complaints, some virtue signaling. I really see that with the men in particular.
He wants to initiate so goddamn bad. He wants to initiate so damn bad.
Oh, I know. I really care a lot for women.
I know.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
Yeah, I saw one TikTok video who was like, I have a wife and I found this severely disrespectful.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, you cuck.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, you cuck. Whatever. Pragmatic.
He probably thinks that's a form of
this?
foreplay.
Yeah, what do you want to get more pussy outside of your wife? Like, chill out. You're already married. She already.
Talking about what you want. That's any SI. He's saying SI statements too.
Respects you. Like, what do you
Yeah, well, I
want
used to see when I had demonstrations around me, which used to be more common than they are now, which is just as well. The worst people I ever saw at those demonstrations weren't the harridan women who were screeching like fishwives, but the men that were hypothetically there to support them. Man, I tell you, I couldn't even look at some of those guys without having a shudder run up my spine. There's almost nothing worse than a man who tries to worm himself in with a group of women by pretending to be more on their side than the women
This man can talk. He's not direct at all.
Actually are.
Neither one of these two.
When their actual motivation is to use that. What was that? Gad Saad, the evolutionary psychologist who works at Concordia, he called that the sneaky fire routine. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's actually a phrase from evolutionary biology. I'll tell you a funny story that goes along with that. Okay. This is hilarious and so telling. So primatologists who studied orangutans figured out a long time ago that there are two variant male types of orangutan. Okay, so there's like, orangutans tend to hang around in trees, they're arboreal. But the males who become dominant in a given territory get so large, sort of like a linebacker in football, and they have these big fat pads around their face that are circular. They get so large they can't really go in trees anymore. And the females come to them. But then there are other males in the vicinity for who the primatologists thought were adolescents for a very long time, because they look like adolescent males and they hang around in the trees. But they turn out to be, many of them,
Shut the fuck up.
Fully mature males whose development into the linebacker is forestalled by the fact that they're not at the top of the pecking order. Right, and so their strategy is sneaky rape.
Jesus.
Right. So it doesn't take much of an imagination to map that onto the feminist male who's so on the side of women that, he gets to be the friend who can entice some poor girl into bed when she's at her lowest point.
So it's almost like their own insecurity and lack of manhood. Manhood probably isn't the best word to use, but it stunts their own evolution.
Well, it requires that they take a different pathway to mating success. They can't use dominance. Right.
So pathetic.
Yeah. So why did you decide to come on my podcast?
I'm a huge fan, man.
Thank you, sir.
Listen, you and I have never met. I'll be truthfully honest. I haven't done extensive research into everything you've done, but I find you to be a very kind man and very well-spoken and someone who stands on their morals and the realism of society today. And I think that is incredibly rare, and I just highly appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you.
He just FE bombed the shit out of him, okay? That's just FE bomb like you've never seen. FE bomb.
Thank you. I wasn't fishing for compliments, but
I
do appreciate the fact that they emerged. Well, I'm curious partly too because I think it's fair to say that your primary fan base is women. I'm not certain of that, but it is the case. Okay, and is it almost always women that you interact with in the crowd?
No, not at all. It's total luck of the draw, whatever happens. I mean, women yell out the most for sure, like they'll heckle the most, so that will draw more adamant crowd work, like that I didn't necessarily intend on doing. But overall, no, it's just luck of the draw.
Is that something that's particularly characteristic of your shows? Because I would think, yeah, right.
Oh, it's
because that's
bad.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I've kind of created my own crowd work monster in a way. A friend of mine put this in perspective for me. If I got popular from doing crowd work, which was a very specific strategy, I only post my crowd work because I don't feel like burning through material. Comics build for minimum a year, 2, 3 years to build an hour-long show, right? I would feel like a total piece of shit if I let you pay money to come see the exact same material you just saw for free online. So crowd work being a very unique circumstance that really isn't to be duplicated at any other show that you do, because you're not going to meet the same person who's been through the same circumstance, or has the same story to tell, right? So this is a very unique thing that you could share, and it doesn't burn through any of your material at all.
So that's why you've been making the specials on YouTube out of crowd work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because you can make them permanent, and you said it doesn't interfere with the novelty of a prepared show.
Yes.
And so you do prepared material as well.
Yeah, I have 2 full specials on YouTube that are fully material.
I've only seen the crowd work. Okay.
Oh, you watched the red flags one?
Yeah.
So I specifically did that special because I was getting popular for doing red flag crowd work just on TikTok. And it got so bad to the point where I'd be in the middle of working on material and people would just be yelling out like, do red flags, or just yelling out like flip-flops, or what, like mama's, like yelling out their own red flags without any context at all. So I was like, fine, I'm gonna do one special at the biggest red flag city there is, Miami, at the Miami Improv, and then that's like the final statement at closing the chapter on my red flag crowd work. Now I don't do it anymore. Now I think this special is like 50 minutes long of me just doing full crowd work for 50 minutes with the people in Miami, and it was a lot of fun. I was happy to close the chapter though.
Okay, but why did you close it, and why were you happy to close it?
Because it does ruin the show when people yell out. I wanted to go, okay, I know you like this thing I do, so here's that. Now you have that final product. I did this specifically for you guys. Now let me grow to do the kind of comedy I want to do. And
let me grow, progression. He said some NE there too. He did that. He gave them what they wanted.
I'm still growing and I'm still learning. I'm 28 years old. Most comics that are top of their game today probably just started at the age I'm at right now. So, I mean, I have a lot of learning and growth to do.
Right.
A lot of talking from this guy.
Right. How long have you been doing comedy professionally?
12 and a half years.
So since you were 16?
15, yeah.
15. Mm-hmm. 15. Were you funny before that?
Yeah. I was always like class clown, making my friends and family and laugh. But I didn't know comedy was a career or even a job until I was about 14. And I kind of discovered who like Dane Cook and Dave Chappelle were. And those guys were at the pinnacle of comedy at that time. So
that's a name drop, T.
I just learned, I studied them, fell in love with the art form, and I started doing open mics when I was 15 after school on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and everything just kind of snowballed. And
everything just kind of snowballed. He didn't have a particular outcome in mind. Progression.
My family's never been to college, so there was no pressure to do anything after high school. Everyone in my hometown kind of does the exact same thing. They just work at like
How big is your hometown?
About 1,200 people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. One stoplight that could have easily been a 4-way stop.
Right.
Never
I know.
Could have easily been a 4-way stop. That's an any statement. Could, abstraction. That's a could, possibility.
Yeah, but that's a mark of attainment to have at least one light in town.
Of course.
Yeah. I came from a little town in northern Alberta. It had about 2,500 people, and it was a big deal when we got our first stoplight, which was like utterly unnecessary.
They just got a Dollar General on the outskirts of town, and everyone's like, "We got a new grocery store." Like they are loving it.
Yeah.
It's a very simple town. Though.
Yeah. I can remember too that when the Kentucky Fried Chicken came to town, that was also a big deal.
When you got a KFC, that's so funny.
Yeah.
He's initiating this guy.
In hindsight, it's one of those places growing up, you go, oh, this is so boring, can't wait to get out of here. But
initiated again.
Looking back, I had such a wonderful childhood. Even going back now, I went back maybe a couple of months ago because I had some shows.
What's the name of the town?
It's called North Lewisburg, Ohio. It's a very, very small town. About Marysville, Ohio is the closest city to it, I suppose. And I was doing shows not far from there and had to drive past it for a tour like 2 months ago, and I stopped through there. Nothing had changed, and I thought that was beautiful. Like I live in LA now, and I tour constantly, but people get so wrapped up into what they think the rest of the world is actually talking about or actually cares about, when it's not true at all. I saw kids riding their bikes and running around.
Not true. I saw this. True, T.I. I saw this. S.I.
playing outside when I was driving through town. I go, I haven't seen that in years. People weren't on their phones. Even people at the gas station when we stopped in, the workers in there were talking, hanging out. Nobody was just on their phones scrolling. We become so detached from the rest of the world when we live in certain environments. It's
How long
so
have you lived in LA?
It'll be 11 years in January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
after I graduated high school early at 17, and I moved out and just couch surfed for the first year and a half.
Okay, so what did you do in LA? Okay, so first of all, you said you started doing open mics when you were about 15? Where?
The Columbus Funny Bone in Columbus, Ohio. I went on the comedy club's website when I kind of figured out open mics were the thing to start with. I don't remember how I found that out. But I remember going to their website, finding out it's 21 and up, as most comedy clubs are due to liquor license. And the owner's email was on there. And like a naive kid, I just emailed the owner. I was like, hey, this is my name, this is how old I am. I know I'm supposed to be 21 and up, but if I have a parent guardian with me, could I come in to try the open mic? And any rational businessman would say, no, I'm not gonna risk my liquor license for some kid to come in here and tell jokes. What could possibly come out of that?
What could possibly? He said any statement before that as well, and he's informative, and he's initiating, and he's pragmatic, and he's TIFE. This guy's the ENTP, Enneagram 7W8. Okay.
But for some odd reason, he said yes, and it allowed me an opportunity to go and practice and enjoy this new thing that I was just doing for fun. I had no idea anything like this could ever happen to me. It was just something I
no idea because I had no outcome in mind. Progression.
was doing for fun to make my grandpa laugh.
And did you make your grandpa laugh?
Oh my God, he was my #1 fan. I miss him every single day.
Oh yes. Oh, so did you have a good time in Columbus doing this?
I did, but it's most Midwestern towns. There's a ceiling.
See that even when he said his grandpa, he said I miss him every single day. He didn't tell you that whether his grandpa died or not or anything. You have to infer what the fuck this motherfucker's saying. This is what I'm talking about when I say informative. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean he doesn't see his grandpa anymore because he doesn't live next to his grandpa, or that his grandfather's dead? He didn't tell you. He just gave you information and didn't stand on it. Informative.
And if you have bigger dreams, you have to escape. You have to go see what else is out there. So
tell me how your career progressed from Columbus. How many shows did you do at Columbus? What was the arc of your career?
So I started when I was 15, and then I got a manager at a comedy club in Atlanta. Over Twitter, believe it or not.
Twitter was good for something.
I know, make or break you.
That's like the one time Twitter has been good for something.
Exactly. Well, this was
good
also
for getting
a time,
canceled. Actually, if you want to get canceled,
it's kind
Twitter's
of
excellent
only its
for that.
use.
Yeah, I know that.
Jesus.
That is its primary use.
What else is it? It's just negativity. It's the worst app. People who thrive on Twitter rarely do well in life. It's so bad. But this was when Twitter was kind of brand new. So what would happen was comics that I was a fan of would come through the state of Ohio, whether Cleveland, Toledo, Dayton, Cincinnati, or Columbus. And this was a time where Twitter was so new, you could access anybody. This was a time when Ashton Kutcher was the only person to have 1 million followers on there. Most celebrities had maybe 10,000 followers on there. You could tweet to somebody and they would see it and they would respond. So I would tweet to favorite comics of mine when they were coming through the state of Ohio. And I'd be like, hey, I'm a big fan, I'm a kid. Could I do a guest spot on your show? And some would say no, some would thankfully say yes.
So who gave you an early opportunity?
D.L. Hughley actually gave me my first ever guest spot, which was so...
Let's start knocking some of these off the list here. Okay, so this guy is obviously extroverted. He's talking. He's cutting them off. This is what we talk about here. I know people say, well, it's an interview, but look at that. This guy's initiating like crazy on top of Jordan Peterson. Okay, so we got that. We also have progression. 5 points for progression. He doesn't have an outcome in mind. He doesn't have an end product. He's just going, figuring it out as he goes. He's about the journey of the thing, not for end product per se. He's also NESI. Okay, could, maybe, possibilities, first person. His first person perspective on a lot of his own experiences. And he's TIFE as well. So he does deductive reasoning, if this then that statements. Also FE. So we got him down to right now ESTP. Oh shit, that's it. No, it's not. It's not it. We're down to ESFJ and ENTP. But we know this guy's pragmatic. He wouldn't be getting canceled if he was fucking ESFJ, okay? So, I mean, we'll go fish back down for some pragmatic statement or abstractions, but this guy is an ENTP.
So funny, because when I was 15 years old, my extent of my D.L. Hughley knowledge was just Soul Plane, where he played a bathroom attendant. His smallest credit to date has to be. I had no realization that he was one of the kings of comedy, like one of the greatest to ever do it and go on one of the most famous tours of all time. But he was so kind to me. He gave me my first guest spot. My second guest spot was Finesse Mitchell, and then it was Ralphie May was like a brother of mine. He's one that really helped me out in my younger years. But through Twitter, there was this comedy club owner in Atlanta who knew DL for a very long time. And he saw DL Hughley and I just going back and forth, joking back and forth with each other on Twitter. He reached out. My mom and I drove down from Ohio to Atlanta. It's like a 9-hour drive to come perform at his club for
give him that extra information there. It's like a 9-hour drive. He didn't need to say that. Just continue with the story.
Weekend. Went there. We hit it off really well. He explained to me the things he wanted to do for my career, and I didn't know any better. So
he wanted any.
I was like, yeah, however you want to help. And my mom was also like, yeah, whatever keeps him off drugs, I guess. So
did that work? Did it keep you off drugs?
Until like my early 20s. Yeah,
okay.
I would say so.
Well, that's not bad. That's probably better. That's a better time.
Who's it? ENTPs and drugs. They'll try every drug once.
Did a fantastic job. Yeah, exactly. I'm from Ohio. I'm lucky I didn't brush my teeth with fentanyl growing up. It was bad. My hometown was so trashy.
That's a huge exaggeration about him. That would be an abstraction. That's figurative expression. Thank you very much for coming into the
training regimen.
Class.
Exactly. And I think to this day, I think it helps me keep my composure in the pocket. Like I'm not thrown for a loop when somebody yells out something.
That typical exposure therapy from a psychological perspective. Right?
Exactly. That's a way fancier way to say it.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So what way? So how did he know to do that? Do you think that's smart?
I'm not sure. He's a fantastic guy. His name's Gary Abdo. He's very prominent in the comedy community. He's helped out a lot of people starting out their career. Like he was very prominent in Chappelle's early years. When he was like a late teenager, Earthquake.
Right. So he's probably seen people thrown by hecklers and so forth and by trouble because you can't get knocked out of your groove.
Well, his comedy club down there was called the Uptown Comedy Corner, and it was notoriously known as like one of the harshest comedy clubs in the country. It was a tough environment. Like they either loved you or they would boo you off stage.
Oh yeah.
So for me to go in there as a kid, yes, you have the novelty of like he's a kid, give him a chance.
Right.
But
only so far.
Yeah. So you got to get them in the first couple of minutes. Otherwise, they're not going to sit there and watch you do 5 or 10 minutes. They don't have that patience in them. So I go down there and I get trained in like one of the harshest environments possible. And in doing that, I meet more comics who are coming through the club. I would pretty much open for like anybody that came through the club down there. I met a lot of comics who lived out of LA. So then when I went back to high school for my senior year, I knew I didn't want to go to college. I knew comedy was what I wanted to do. So I flew out to Los Angeles and I took the CHESP, the California Proficiency Exam, which in certain states, it's kind of like college where you have to have a certain amount of credits to graduate high school. The CHESP is essentially a test you can take at any time that basically tests you out of high school. You've learned everything you need to learn.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes.
That's a great option.
It's fantastic. So I flew out there, took the test, came back. I had to wait like 2 weeks for my results, but I had a good feeling about it. So I was just going to school for 2 weeks and just like sleeping throughout class. I wouldn't do any of the work. I wouldn't take any of the tests.
How old were you at that point?
I just turned 17, maybe I just turned 17. I was maybe still 16.
And so that's after you came back from LA?
Yes.
Right.
Came back from taking the test, waiting for the results, got the results back at like the first week of January, moved out to my friend Eric Griffin's couch 2 weeks after that. So I was about like 4 or 5 months early from graduating high school, moved out there, lived on his couch for the first couple of months. Then my manager at the time, his son graduated film school. He moved out to Los Angeles. I stayed on his couch for the next year. And I was just going to comedy clubs every single night. I would go and just hang out. Some of them wouldn't even let me hang out inside. until finally people would vouch for me. People wouldn't show up on the lineup. And where somebody was like, well, he's here.
All right, so you're
Just give
hanging
him a
around
chance.
enough to get your opportunity.
Exactly. But funny enough, sometimes
he's just going and going. He's progressing, man. He's an ENTP.
would get the opportunity to go on stage, and I literally couldn't step foot in the comedy club until they were like announcing, and Matt Rife. And then I would have to run through into the comedy club, go on stage, and leave immediately after because I wasn't 21. So they still had to abide by like their own rules in a very loophole way. And in doing that, I just kind of stayed
He beat the system.
Consistent in the scene. I was getting more and more prominent stage time. I started to book smaller and smaller turning into larger TV appearances, which was some Disney stuff that led to a bunch of MTV stuff. And then after I left all my MTV stuff, I just became really dedicated to stand up and transferring over to acting and producing and developing and all that kind of stuff.
So what did you do for MTV?
My first thing I did on there was Wild 'N Out. I did 4 seasons of that. I was like the youngest cast member. It was right after Pete Davidson left there to go do SNL. They needed a white guy, and I happened to fit like that exact mold. Went on there, learned so
that's
much.
I think Pete Davidson's also ENTP, and this guy is one too.
Very strange.
Obviously, he fits the same mold. I'm telling you, man, these ENTP white dudes, I swear I can spot them so easy because ENTPs have the ENTP white dudes. They have a black soul, so it's very easy for me to spot them. It's like I could be anywhere and I'd be like, okay, he's ENTP. Like I joke with Kyle all the time that he's black as shit. Or Steffi, I'd be like, bro, you're black as shit. But in general, you'll see that with ENTPs, man. They fit right in with a lot of black people, generally speaking.
Diversity hire.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. We're short of white guys. Yeah, let's call Matt.
Never
He's
hear
white.
it anymore.
No, that's not a likely diversity hire.
But it could not have been a better learning experience because I was a very insecure, shy kid, and I was going on a show with comics. This was the revamp of Wild 'N Out. This was after Kevin Hart, D. Ray Davis, Corey Holcomb, all these amazing, Cat Williams, all these fantastic comics had left the show, and they rebooted it with a lot of comics I knew from the Atlanta scene who were monsters. Carlos Miller, DC Young Fly, Chico Bean are all killers on stage. And I had to compete with them. And I knew I couldn't, but I at least had to hold my ground. And in doing that, I just went through the gauntlet over there. Like everyone at that show turned me into a man with confidence on stage. And
Through suffering, I've gotten very good.
I'm so grateful for that. I can't imagine I would have gotten that experience anywhere else. So I did a few seasons on the show, and the show was fun. I enjoyed my experience on there, but I had a very niche role to play. Every joke I said had to be about me being the white guy on the show. If I ever tried to step out,
very constrained.
Yes.
routine.
Anytime I try to step out of it, people will be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I thought I was gonna do like a clever joke." And they're like, "No, do the thing you're here to do." And although I enjoyed it and I had built a little bit of a name for myself, I was like, "This isn't what I want to do."
That's an interesting set of constraints, right? I mean, it's a very tight set of constraints, and one of the facts that emerges from the literature on creativity is that you tend to get creative responses when people are constrained very severely. Best example I know of that is, so there's a Japanese poetry form known as haiku, which has very strict rules. Well, MIT nerds set up a website decades ago now that was devoted to haiku that could only be about the luncheon meat spam. And there's like 50,000 haikus. There's literally 50,000 haikus online in the online haiku spam archive. And they're hilarious, but partly they're hilarious because, well, it's bad enough that you have to just do haiku because that's like pointless and constraining to begin with. But then to restrict it even further.
So specific.
Well, it forces a kind of wit. And so I can imagine that having the constraint of only being able to make jokes about being the white guy must have also been one of the things that sharpened your wit.
I think so too. And I think, unless I'm misconstruing this, I think that's probably why crowd work works the best for me, because I'm very constrained. Like I have to answer what they're saying to me with a funny response in association with what they're talking about. I don't have vast options. It has to be now, and it has to be about what they're saying.
Okay, so you said that you were a shy kid, and obviously the last thing in some ways that you would expect a shy kid to be doing is to be doing online stand-up comedy in front of live audiences and then taping that's specifically devoted to crowd work. Because I can't actually imagine a situation maybe if you threw someone on stage and said, like, sing naked, that would be about the equivalent of inducing self-consciousness. So how did you get to the point where, what did you have to do so that your shyness was no longer making you self-conscious on stage? And how is it that you orient yourself towards the audience so you don't become
I guess she's going to say comfortable.
Self-conscious when you're, now you'll become self-conscious because we're delving.
No, not at all, not at all.
So I'm curious about how you keep yourself not focusing on whether or not you're being funny, for example, when you're interacting with the audience.
It's purely confidence, whether it's real or fake confidence. I think when I was younger, I did develop a fake confidence.
Yeah, right.
I was bullied a lot in high school. Not like getting shoved into lockers, but to the point where I wasn't in anybody's group. I was class clown. I was the butt of a lot of people's jokes, which didn't hurt, at least I tell myself, but I think that's where you learn to deflect, right? You have two options in a moment when somebody makes a joke at your expense. You can either laugh along and play into it and go with it, or you can be embarrassed and everybody sees you're embarrassed, which is even more embarrassing.
Yeah, right, that just invites further abuse,
So I think growing up, I developed this sense of false confidence where I went, hey, if I also make fun of myself and I get in on your guys' joke, it won't hurt or people can't tell that I'm upset.
Self-deprecation, that's FE.
People think it doesn't bother me.
Because obviously, so I'm going to challenge your supposition that was false. Well, because the thing about being funny is that if you're false, you're not funny. And if you're not funny and you're
all this TI from Jordan Peterson
being bullied, you're just going to get bullied worse. So you were obviously, it seems like you were able to generate responses that were witty and that were funny.
But purely a defense mechanism, I think. It wasn't for the point of like, oh, I hope I get a good joke off here. I think it was, I have to deflect them saying a mean thing with me saying a funny thing.
Right, but so I would say that's actually a very sophisticated defense, because I mean, one of the things that people do, guys do this particularly in like relatively rough working class jobs, is they'll throw pointed barbs at each other to see, are you the sort of person who gets irritated and flies off the handle and can't be trusted in a crisis? Or are you the sort of person that can roll with a joke and maybe even say something funny? And so I wouldn't say that the ability to do that is false. I would say that's it's more sophisticated form of defense than physical aggression. I mean, physical aggression can be useful, but there isn't a more sophisticated way of parrying like a pointed remark than to turn it into something that's funny and to toss it back.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a totally subconscious skill set. I had no idea until right now, apparently, what I was even doing. So A, thank you. And B, I think it starts then, and then the longer you do stand up, you realize you're funny. Eventually, you do realize you're funny. Chris Rock talks about this all the time when he talks about when comedians can't tell a joke on stage and it doesn't work. After a certain point, you're funny, you're just not saying your joke correctly to where the audience perceives it the way you want them to perceive it.
Right, so you don't experience moments of global doubt.
Exactly.
It's localized.
Exactly. So I think after a while, I mean, after doing comedy for 12 years and having had shows of uproarious laughter and standing ovations, you're capable of being funny and putting on a good show.
Right.
So I think that confidence is paired with the control of an audience. When you're on stage with a microphone, people are there to watch and listen to you.
They're also hoping you'll be funny, except for the odd troll. So they could be on your side.
Yes, and then once people see how you can handle that kind of power, that you can be funny, that you can shut somebody down, I think people are more apt to take the seat and just go, okay, let me just see what he does.
Right. They're going to give you more of the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and it's tricky too, responding to a crowd like that too, because you have to be funny. Well, and this is, I suppose, in some ways why you've gotten into trouble. You have to be funny, but you can't be too mean, right? You can't hit a fly with a sledgehammer. Your response has to be proportionate.
Yes.
I mean, you up the ante a little bit, that's my presumption. You up the ante a little bit when someone says something smart, but you don't come out with like the long knives and hack someone to bits.
Of course.
Right, because that'll turn them again. Because first of all, you can actually hurt someone publicly by doing that, which is not good if it's not necessary. And second, you could easily turn the audience against you. Well, this is also
Talking about outcomes.
again why I think it's so unfair that comedians in particular face this kind of absurd cancellation pressure, because the line that a good comic is walking on is so damn thin. You have to be playing with disaster in order to be funny, right? The things you say. This is one of the things I used to really like about Sarah Silverman, because she would say, you could see it. She'd be listening to someone and some absolutely horrible
Jordan
thought.
Peterson, you on my nerve, bro. I'm done. Jordan Peterson just won't shut the fuck up. All right, this guy's ENTP. So isfj is gone. He's pragmatic. Obviously, he's getting fucking canceled. He's abstract. Okay, that's what allows him to be on stage and come up with these jokes out of nowhere. It's just any. A lot of comedians are ENTPs, by the way. So, generally speaking, you see comedian, you should probably be thinking most likely this guy might be ENTP, especially if they're saying pragmatic fucking jokes. Systematic, abstract, initiating, pragmatic, progression, SINE, scroll down so you guys can see that. And this guy is Enneagram 7. We're going 7W8. Okay. I'm going to go SO/SP. Okay. That's what I'm going to go for his Enneagram. And I'm going to say he's above average ENTP. I don't think he's that great. I'm really not that blown away. I'd like to see him articulate himself a little bit better. But I'll give him above average. I think the girls like him and they pep him up a lot. And he's been around a lot of good comedians. So I'm going to give him above average. SOSP 7W8 ENTP. And comment below what you thought his personality type is. Personality database got it fucking wrong with ESTP. So wrong ENTP. But this is Mongolian Mindset, and we are out.